All right, guys, welcome back to the Rick Shiels Golf Show podcast, episode 320. Today, I honestly think you guys are going to absolutely love this podcast episode. We have a guest on today who's going to really help you with your psychology, your mindset out on the golf course. Tom Young, who is a performance psychologist who's worked across loads of different sports, including football, rugby, obviously golf as well. He's worked with top professionals in the game, including Tommy Fleetwood and many others. And also, Tom was part of Team Europe for the last 4 years, helping the team become the powerhouse they have become when we overcome the USA, guys. So in this podcast, we really dive into a lot of that. I feel like Team USA might be even listening to this to pick up some tips, but you're not going to learn. We're too good. Tom covers loads of things, not only to kind of understanding professional sports at the highest level, how they overcome things like nerves and making sure they get the best out of their performance. Things like Rory McIlroy at the Masters this year, like how did he go on and win it after so many disappointing results? Things like how Tommy Fleetwood have had a fantastic year this year and what has he done to overcome those kind of hurdles, etc. And obviously we dive loads into the Ryder Cup, but also there's loads of top tips, Tom's top tips to help you guys as well with your own performance, whether that's first tee nerves, the yips, how the young golfers perform at the best level without getting too hard on themselves. Honestly, sit back with a notepad and pen because there are loads of great tips in this podcast you are going to learn from. And even I'm going to listen back to this podcast because I need it for my own game because I get a little bit nervous every now and again. So guys, without further ado, episode 320 with Tom Young, sports psychologist, performance psychologist. And I honestly believe this is one of our best podcasts we have ever made. Right, Tom, I think this might be one of our most valued podcasts we have ever done.
Okay, no pressure then.
No pressure, because I think so many people listening and watching really struggle, and I'm the same, I am literally that person, struggle with the mental game when it comes to golf. Because how much is golf with between the ears?
Well, I think psychology can't beat physics for a start, so there isn't a golf swing element to it, but 100% it's massively between the ears. Like, we all do psychology, don't we?
Yeah.
So we're all doing it all the time. Those who work on it are going to get better at it. Those who don't, you're kind of just working with what you've got. So for me, it's something you've got to work at, even just small things that you can start to do to build into your kind of practice and your routines and things like that.
I think my goal by the end of today's podcast, I feel like we should be doing this where I'm sat on like a chaise and a leather sofa. I bet you get that a lot, don't you? But I want to get out the end of today's podcast. I want people to be listening and watching to really pick up on a few top tips that can help them with the game.
Yep.
Because like you say, we all go to driving range, hit balls, and then Saturday morning thinking, right, here we go. This can be my best round ever. And then lo and behold, the nerves, the tension, whatever happens, our brain stops us from performing.
Yep.
Kicking things off then, Tom, you've worked in numbers of different sports, football, rugby, golf, obviously. What are the most common traits you see in the best athletes?
It's a really good question, and it's one that you wish you had like a really simple answer to. Because I think sometimes when you watch these people on TV, you think they've got some magic ingredient that we don't have.
Yeah.
And often that's one of the things is that they are all different. So they're all unique personalities. So they all have strengths. They all have a sweet spot that they can kind of tap into. They all have times where those strengths get overplayed a little bit and we get a little bit fixed. So the first thing is they're not perfect, whether that's football, rugby, golf, running, whatever it might be. They're human beings first and foremost. I think a couple of things they do have, there will be an element of resilience in there, and that can be bouncing back from a setback, but it can also be the ability just to manage your own emotions in the moment. So to choose how you respond rather than to react instinctively would be one. And I think probably getting to the point where you're almost comfortable in your own skin. So you realise that what you've got, that's what you're working with, that they don't waste time trying to be something that they're not or wishing they were more like somebody else. It's about you as an individual and how you can then work with that.
Almost unlocking your own superpowers.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of the time, especially if you work with someone maybe as a young athlete, they'll often have like idols or people they might look up to, and they'll think, oh, I wish I was more like him, or I wish I could be more like her. And that's great to take things from people that you look up to, but often you can waste time trying to be something that you're not.
Yeah.
And trying to almost wish away or kind of want to tap into something else as opposed to working with those raw ingredients that you have. So one of the things I'd often say to people is you're already enough. It's how we can improve that. And we can take little things and add that on, but fundamentally it's about what we've got as a human being.
And how does somebody understand what ingredients they have?
I think it's self-awareness that builds over time. So I think you can see with certain athletes as they progress. So it might be that they kind of burst onto the scene as a talented athlete, but as they get older, they almost start to realise that self-awareness. Okay, when am I at my best? When do I maybe fall into certain thinking traps? And almost constantly reflecting. So one of the things I'll find is that athletes will constantly be reflecting. And it's quite easy to reflect when we don't do things well. But what about when we do things well? So one of the things you might often see with an athlete is they'll be a bit of a perfectionist. So they'll really dive deep when something goes wrong. And when something goes well, they kind of just go, well, that's my job. That's what I should do. And we kind of skirt over that. And people do it in teams. They do it in business. So actually unpicking success. What did I actually do? What was present? What were the ingredients? Those kind of questions can be really good at kind of realizing what raw ingredients you do have. And also, like, resilience would be something that we talk about a lot. I would challenge most people, all people listening, they already are resilient. You'll be able to think of a time when you've been resilient.
Of course.
Okay, so what made that up? It's not something you've either got or you haven't.
Yeah, you've not learned it, have you?
No.
It's something that's ingrained.
Yeah, and you might have learned it kind of as a kid. And one of the things is, like, the studies on Olympic athletes, that they almost have like a fanatical reaction to challenge. You know, if you tell someone they can't do something, some people go, oh, okay, you must be right. And some people go, I'm going to prove you wrong, I think. So I think that fanatical reaction to challenge is probably something that a lot of elite athletes would have in common as well.
Do you think, as whether this is sports people, golfers, or just humans in general, are we almost too hard on ourselves? Like you mentioned there, like how many times have probably everyone listening and watching has played a really good round of golf, like the best you've ever played. But whatever it is afterwards, you still pick up on the negatives. Oh, yeah, but that 3-footer I missed on the third, or just if I'd have hit that shot a little bit closer, it could have been this, it could have been that.
Yeah.
And you're right, you don't really ever sit down and go, well, my first tee shot was wonderful today. I handled the nerves and I managed to hit that brilliant shot. Coming down the stretch when I needed to make par to shoot my best score, I actually managed to make par. As much as I was nervous, I managed to do it. We're very quick to judge ourselves, aren't we? And is that a human trait? Is it a sports person's trait? Is it weirdly like a British trait? Like what have you found working with different professionals or just people in general?
I would say that it's something I see across sport and business, like people who have those kind of busy brains, that the perfectionist in them. They're often high achievers as well because they have such high standards that they expect that of themselves. So when they don't hit that, they're really tough on themselves. You sometimes admire the people who can kind of just forget it, don't you? So sometimes you're kind of thinking, but you wouldn't want to get rid of that, because that's probably the same thing that makes you turn up again and keep going.
That's the fire.
And never being satisfied. So there is an element, like a trade-off. If you were to get rid of that, you would lose some of these other things as well. So there will be athletes that kind of can forget quite easily, that train themselves to look at those kind of successful moments. So after a round of golf, I would always say, like, what were the 3 best moments? Like, how did those feel? Try and tap into those, because it's very easy to dwell on the stuff that didn't go great. You go into a clubhouse and everyone's talking about, oh yeah, well, I shot 80, but it could have been a 76 if I'd just done this. And they kind of forget the one that they drained from 30 feet, or
100%.
They got up and down miraculously, or they found their ball when really it was probably, it bounced back in bounds and things like that.
Could we almost title this as Tom's top tip?
Maybe.
Could we give a little top tip of, like, one of the things that everyone should do after a round is almost write down actual positive things that have taken place?
Yeah, that would be one of them. So, I think it's a good practice to do anyway. Like, it sounds a bit serious, doesn't it? You try and, especially if you're kind of just giving tips to people who are just playing golf of a weekend, you want things that are quite quick to do.
Yeah, of course.
You don't have to sit down and go and see a psychologist or sit on a couch or any of that kind of stuff. It's just little habits that you can build into, like, a framework of your performance. And you can break that down into, like, what do you do before a round? What can you do during a round? And then after a round, how do you kind of take the lessons from that?
Yeah.
Because you will dwell on the negatives naturally, especially if you're kind of attuned to threats and things like that and you've got really high standards. So what were the things? What were the 3 moments, 3 best shots, 3 best reactions, whatever it might be? And what did I learn about myself, or what did I learn about the game?
Yeah.
And sometimes if you do that and you go through that process, it just quietens that brain down. If you're an overthinker, it's not going to stop you overthinking, but it might mean that you're not thinking about it at 11 o'clock that night. You're thinking about it at 8 o'clock
or the
that
next
night.
week.
Exactly, when you're next on the tee. So that would be one thing you can kind of implement quite easily.
Well, also, like, I think when you highlight positives, they happen more often. Like when you highlight those, I did hit that great first tee shot, or I did hold that 30-footer. Suddenly you kind of putting that into your brain that, oh, you're somebody who can hit great tee shots when it matters. You are the person who can drain a 30-footer.
Yeah.
Like you almost, like, positive affirmations set you up for the next round of golf, don't they, as well?
Yeah, it's like remembering the good stuff, like reminding yourself, kind of conditioning yourself that you can do these things, but also, how did those things feel when you did that? Or what did I do beforehand? How did I feel as I was approaching that shot? Because a lot of athletes chase like a flow state. You'll have heard that phrase, right? Oh, I was in flow.
Is this the zone?
Yeah, that would be one way. And in reality, you probably only get in that zone as amateurs, probably not a huge amount, but you know, a couple of times a year maybe, I don't know. Whereas if you're constantly chasing that state and then missing it, that can feel quite disappointing. So actually, I kind of try and go, okay, well, it's great when you're in flow. You almost don't need any of this stuff when you're in flow, because it is just flowing, right? So what's your clutch state? How can you get the best out of a round when you're grinding, when you've got to kind of stay in there, when you've got to make par on the last or whatever it might be? That kind of stuff. They're almost some of the most kind of satisfying rounds, aren't they, when you've stuck in there?
Of course they are. Yeah. The amount of times where you've not got your best stuff, but you've managed to grind out a round, you think, I'm really proud of myself there, because the scorecard doesn't reflect how I felt that day.
Yeah. Well, they're your best mental performances often, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Like when you've got something out of it that maybe you didn't deserve.
Do you think golf is one of the hardest sports to get into flow, because it is so stop and start and you have a lot of time to think? Because I think there's a lot of the time, you know, as a footballer, how many times do they actually get nervous? Like, I'm sure they're nervous pre-game, but I'm sure when that kickoff starts, they're off, aren't they?
Yeah.
And unless they get a penalty in the last kick of the game, I bet nerves don't really come into play that often. Where golf, it happens a lot. Yeah. Like, you're up and down your emotions all the time in golf, aren't you? Because it's much more slower pace, static sport. You've got time to think. Yeah, and
I think that's the big thing with golf. Like, I started playing golf, I think we've actually had this conversation, like having grown up playing like football, rugby, team sports, that if you get angry, you can just kind of take that out with a bit of kind of physical aggression. You can try and hit something a bit harder. Yeah. You can...
Satisfying, isn't it? You can do try something harder, can't you?
And I quickly realised when I started playing golf that actually if you do that, it often gets worse. Yeah. So the thinking time, you know, all the stuff you just talked about, the walk in between shots, the fact that something can happen that just seems so unfair, or someone can say something that winds you up and it's just you. Like, there's nobody else who you can kind of hide behind or you can pass it to or kind of abdicate responsibility. You've got to do everything. And I remember one of the golfers saying to me, like, almost, I wish I was a footballer at times, because I can just turn up, you get given a protein shake and you get given a breakfast and you get told when training is and you get a program in the gym and you go out and you do it, then you eat, then you go home and it's all done. Whereas these guys, especially at the highest level, are kind of like mini CEOs. They're having to make all the key decisions. They're having to hit all the shots. They're having to kind of manage a team as well. And you're doing it all yourself, and no one comes in at 9 holes and gives you a team talk.
No,
you know, Pep Guardiola's not there to give you a team talk. You've almost got to do that to yourself. So there's so much more load, I guess. And then if you look at like a football or a rugby, you're right. Like, I've seen players throwing up in changing rooms that becomes part of their ritual. So there's obviously nerves and anxiety there. But that becomes just, once you're on that field and the whistle goes, you're in kind of, it's so fast paced.
You can almost run it off, can't you? You can almost run those nerves off. It's like, right, I'm going, let's go. Like,
you might get someone in like a team sport where they've almost got so much anxiety or nerves that you know, when your legs feel heavy because you've got so much kind of, or you've used so much energy beforehand. So you've sometimes got to manage it in that way. But yeah, in terms of actual nerves before a specific shot and things like that, you're probably comparing it to like a penalty kick or a conversion in rugby or something like that.
And in golf, you've got 70 odd of those.
Yeah, or 80 odd.
When you start working with an athlete, and obviously this is a golf podcast, I know you've worked over loads of different sports, but when you start working with an athlete, and you can tailor it to golf if you wish, what are the things you're looking for? So you get a phone call tomorrow, okay?
Yeah.
And it's let's say it's a tour player, okay? High profile, top 10 player in the world. And they ring you, Tom, I need your help. Mm-hmm. What's the process?
The actual process, like to start with, is you would have an initial conversation with them to kind of see, if you don't know them, for instance, you got to see if you can gel and you can work together. So often if I'm working with a client or a potential client, you'd have like a 15, 20 minute call, or you say it's going to be that and it's normally an hour.
Yeah.
But they've then got to decide if they think they can work with you, if there's a connection from that point of view. And I've got to do the same as well. Now, when I started, you'd have probably just said yes to everything because you just want to do the work. But you've got to look for that connection. And then once you're through that process, I suppose someone can come to you and they just want to get better. And sometimes that's a really kind of nice brief. So one of the things that I've found, and I think it's changing and it's changed a lot over the years, is that you almost go to psychology as a last resort, or there's something wrong, or we've got to like fix a problem, which is fine. Like I've worked with people before, it might just be a couple of sessions and you just try and tweak something. But if you have someone who just wants to work on themselves, and it's kind of like, I think I've got a pretty good handle on this, but I'd love to get a little bit better.
Take it to the next level.
Yeah, that's almost a perfect brief. But you're looking for that connection, and then you're looking to really get into this. Like, is this something that's going to be something that's relatively kind of a really direct, I need to improve this? Or is it something that they want to look at their overall performance and really kind of dive deep into that? When
we first ever met, I think it was about 2020, 2019 in Dubai at L's Club. Mm-hmm. And in the locker room, you came up to me and introduced yourself to me, and you were working with, at the time, Tommy Fleetwood.
Yep.
And you'd worked with Tommy for quite a while, didn't you? A number of years. Yep. What were the things that you were working on with Tommy?
I mean, so I worked with Tommy for a number of years. We worked together for kind of a couple of years early on in his career, around 2013, 14. Then we stopped, and then we started again in kind of start of 17 up to 2022. So that's quite rare to work with someone for such a long period of time. So he would obviously fit into that category of you kind of working with someone in just who wants to get better. So obviously going back to 2013, you meet this young player who you know is a brilliantly talented golfer, who also happens to just be a really good lad. Really nice guy. He's been on here and lives up the road from me, so I'm in Preston, he's in Southport. So that was kind of the connection. And that kind of brief, I suppose, goes from like those first couple of years where it's maybe a little bit more like coach to athlete or teacher pupil in some ways, because young athlete coming through, to fast forward to like obviously that period in 2017, 2022, where it's a little bit more of a, I would say, a collaboration. So with an athlete like that, you're working on stuff off the course. So you're working on things like who you are as a person, where do you want to go, what your values, what your trademarks, those kind of things. And then you're then looking at kind of the team dynamic side of things. So how do you work with a caddy? So obviously got Finno, working with him, the coaches around the team as well. And then there's on-course elements to it. So mental skills, trying to build a mental framework where you can kind of tap into those skills, I guess. Understanding that self. So what are my strengths? Yeah. You know, someone who's very consistent, very patient. He's obviously a lovely guy, but he also has a real toughness to him.
He's got a dog in him, hasn't he?
He has got that dog in him. And now when you look at what he's doing now, and he looks like someone who's completely comfortable in his own skin. Probably in that sweet spot where you realise that, you know, who I am as a person, as a human being, this does work. I don't have to be someone that I'm not. I can get those results that my talent obviously shows. So you worked with him for a long time, off and on. Mm-hmm. This year, certainly the back end of this year has been the greatest last 3 or 4 months that he's probably had in his career. Yeah. But you must have been following his journey a bit this year and going, wow, he's continuously getting so close, weren't he? Like how many times was he knocking at the door? You know, that time when he missed out to Keegan Bradley and all that. He was literally there. Yeah. At that point, are you looking at it from an outsider thinking it's just a matter of time? Yeah. Just because you can look at his career. I think it's someone who probably does kind of get close, then overcome that hurdle, proves to himself that he can overcome that hurdle, and then kicks on. Do you know what I mean? So kind of, and has that ability just to be persistent, to grind, to
I mean,
keep
you talked
going.
about resilience before.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that really impressed me with Tommy this year was like his post-round interviews.
Yeah, they were unbelievable, weren't they? I actually messaged him just saying those interviews are brilliant, because it's quite rare, I think, especially for someone who's still playing. So you get loads of interviews, don't you, in sport now for people who've retired, and they can be quite vulnerable and they can be quite open and they reveal things that we didn't know. When he came out and gave those interviews kind of just after falling short, he was kind of like I mean, it was really like, wow. And you know, he was just saying it's gonna happen. You know, I'm keep putting myself in these positions, but it's gutting it's not happened. Like, and I'm thinking, wow, and I think the fandom he got from that as well was huge. Well, everyone bought into that story, didn't they? And I think probably because you've seen him for so long now as well. You know, he's not faking it.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like, over in the US, they obviously really buy into him. Over here, we love him as well. So that kind of, I think the process, the journey he'd been on, any story that's worth kind of reading, watching, any film, there's always a lot of hardship in it.
Of course there is.
So, and the fact that he was kind of saying, well, I'd rather be challenging and coming short than finishing 30th.
Yeah.
I think that shows. And like, it's not about just thinking positive all the time. Like, there are times we have to confront like the facts, right? I am coming up short. How am I going to overcome that final hurdle? And to me, it was just a matter of time. I think you could, as I say, you map kind of his career going back. Yes, he's obviously hugely talented, but having those bumps and then getting over it, you kind of just thought he is someone who will stick with the process and just stay in there. Like, some of his best rounds, like I mentioned before, when we worked together, were like those rounds. I remember one at Birkdale where it was like down, dark, horrible, and obviously huge pressure. And he had to, I think he shot one of the best rounds of the day in horrible conditions to make the cut.
Yeah, on the Friday of the Open.
Yeah, and it's just that ability to grind, and it's kind of undervalued, I think, at times.
What do you think his next steps are moving into 2026? Obviously, the Open's back at Birkdale, home Open. How does someone manage those emotions? You worked with him 2017, I guess, the Open at Birkdale. Was that the year 2017?
I can't remember which year it was. Yeah, you'll know better than me.
I think it was. So, like, you know, I know you're not currently working with him, but going into that for next year, that must be a huge target for him.
Yeah.
But is there almost a fault of almost making that too big of an event? Like, the people almost build these events up too high in their own mind, or can you not do that?
I think there's no point downplaying it too much. There's no point saying it's just another tournament, or it's just the Open, which doesn't make sense anyway, does it? But it's just the Open at Birkdale. That doesn't work. So there's no point denying that, because you just waste all this energy, and then when it comes to it, it hits you. So I think he'll be in a much better position to, having done it before and gone through it before, that home Open. He knows he's got the support, which is positive, and you've got to kind of harness that. And because he's then done that in team events, Ryder Cups, etc., I think he'll be a lot better equipped for that. But yeah, there's still going to be pressure, but it's a privilege really to be in that position. If you go back to what he was probably thinking as a kid, that position, how lucky are you to be able to do that?
Well, we've seen it. Rory at Royal Portrush in 2019, like, that was real. Like, I felt I was stood there on that first tee, home lad, that literally the hero, and he stood there and he smashed it out of bounds left, and like, you think, my goodness. I mean, he did similar to Tommy. He had a terrible first round in their home Opens, and actually went out on the Friday and played unbelievable golf. Like, obviously the pressure's off, and you actually then can feed from the home crowd a bit more. Yeah,
because there's almost, it's like, almost subconsciously you think, I've got to, like, I'm going to push now, because it's complete freedom in some ways. Yeah. But subconsciously it's like, well, I'm not just going to fade here and just miss the cut, kind of, I don't know, in like a boring way. I'm going to do it in a Rory McIlroy kind of way. So I was staying with a family that week in Portrush, and this who are from there, and he just got on his push bike. He was like, I'm going down, he's a member, got on his push bike and rode down to watch the last bit, you know, and the whole place was just kind of, the energy was crazy. But it does show, doesn't it? You know, this is someone who's one of, if not the best player in the world, who can perform under huge pressure, and it's had an impact.
Do you feel like, talking about Rory as well, obviously he came over a huge hurdle this year, winning the Masters in April. Like, how you talk about resilience. I mean, that again is a perfect example of resilience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like every year, I mean, he's not going to not turn up, but every year he's trying and he's trying and he's trying, and he would have died trying to win that green jacket.
Yeah.
He did in a very dramatic style.
Yeah.
Like what?
Which is the way you'd want to do it, really. Looking back, not in the moment, but I guess like looking back, you think it'd be quite cool to win it in a dramatic fashion, you know.
Like, and even the final round, it was full of mistakes. Really.
Yeah.
Like you watching that as a sports psychologist and a huge fan of golf.
Yeah.
How do you even look through that round? Like, was your brain just going mental on that final round of Rory at the Masters?
I think I'd always look at it from a positive, I guess, and you kind of think how good it is to be able to recover from each one of those kind of setbacks. So for me,
like when he dunked it into the stream on 13.
Yeah. So what's the process in that? Because it's so easy. We all know, like, and he is a human being who's very good at golf. So from a human being point of view, the brain's going, get on with this. Like, let's get out of here. Like that little voice that we all have. So to be able to quieten that, and that's what I mentioned at the start, being able to choose your response rather than react in that way.
Yeah.
So having a process to do that. Obviously, this is what they do from a kind of job point of view, but to have that framework that they can tap into and go, right, what do I need to do next? Being able to do that is a real skill. Sounds really simple, but actually when everything's speeding up, to be able to just stop and just calm down. Like I always think of Danny Willett when he won it, and he talked about when he went into the Portaloo, and he just went in and kind of had a little quiet word with himself. That ability to choose that response or just to reframe something in your mind is a really key skill.
Because how many times, God, I've done it, golfers listening and watching, you've just three-putted or you've just double bogeyed the last and you stand on that next tee and you just want to smash it, don't you? You just want to smash it as hard as you can. You're not thinking rationally at all.
No.
Like you don't almost care about what happens. You just want to get that anger out. Like how do you stop that from happening? Well, I've done it so many times. I still do it now.
Does it work for you?
Never.
No. But there might be some people where it does work
like
for
Tyrrell?
you. Yeah.
Like Tyrrell's.
Yeah.
Tyrrell Hatton is such an interesting character. And I don't think many people could operate how he operates and manages his nerves or his anger on the golf course is unlike any golfer.
Yeah. But you wouldn't try and change him. I know there was obviously some time where he might get some negative press and things like that, but it works for him in terms of that kind of humour as well, like his dark humour essentially, isn't it? Like the way he talks to himself. So you'd listen to that and go, well, that sounds like negative self-talk. Well, it is, but it's so negative, it's kind of positive. And it obviously kind of turns it around for him. But what I was saying in terms of that, you have a three-putt. If some people are angry, or sometimes it just frees them up. So you've got to almost realise where someone's starting point is. So if you're someone who might be a little bit cautious, who might overthink a bit, and you're on the tee and you kind of just think, sod it, I'm just going to whack this. That can actually be something quite beneficial. Yeah. If you're someone who naturally is quite aggressive and it makes you get more aggressive, that can sometimes be the negative because you're overplaying that strength or that tendency. Sometimes you need to go, right, what do I need to do here?
Yeah.
So it depends where your starting point is. Sometimes you need to kind of step into a mindset that's not yours. Does that make sense? So if you're a naturally assertive, aggressive individual who wants to take everything on, at some point you almost need to tap into a more, what would sound like a negative or defensive mindset to just go, right, what's the best way of doing this? Or what could trip me up here? Whereas if you're someone who's naturally seeing the threats, oh, watch this, watch that, sometimes you need to dial up that like optimistic, more forceful approach to just go, right, we're just going for it here.
Yeah.
So that you can't work with every player in the same way. So when we say like, oh, what's this person like? Or, what are the common traits of a elite golfer or elite athlete? Everyone's starting point is
totally different.
Yeah. And so being able to tap into a different mindset is a real skill, which I think we sometimes miss. Wow.
That's mental. The other thing I was thinking of then, just when we were talking about how golf is very different to other sports.
Yeah.
A match of, let's say it's a cup final. You've got one night to be nervous about, which is hard because you can't go to sleep that night, and you wake up next day and you've got the rest of you get 90 minutes to play. In golf, I mean, all tournaments now, even now, live golf is 4 rounds of that. It's 4 nights of trying to, like, if you're leading the Masters, from start to finish, how the hell do you sleep at night?
Yeah.
How do you not think about it? Like, have you worked with athletes in those positions, and what kind of guidance do you try and give at that point?
It's really difficult because you can't just say, "I'll just be in the process," or like,
I just got to sleep.
Yeah, just go to sleep. Just get to sleep early. Like, because what do you do then? You lie in bed, kind of, trying to get some kind of sleep. So I think obviously that is the norm to an extent, as in there is an element within golf, like, of the kind of load, both from a physical point of view, but a mental point of view. These guys do a lot of physical recovery as well, don't they now?
Yeah.
Like, almost treated like the athletes that they are, I guess. And then there's mental recovery. So what we talked about before in terms of reflection after a round, planning before a round, like almost little pockets of focus that you're trying to use to quieten that brain a little bit. And then you would want somebody to go and do something that's going to enable you to recharge. So if you want to recharge, think about yourself as a mobile phone. We plug it in every night. What small things could you do to recharge? They would be things that naturally play into that sweet spot. So it might be, okay, watch
a film.
It could be watch a film. But it could be something, spend time with family, spend time with loved ones, have a phone call with someone who's back home.
Play on PlayStation or whatever.
Read a book, whatever it might be. So how do we recharge? So I would say recharging in between those rounds, and they're not going for a hike or anything like that. Just something, could be quite stationary, could be something that takes 5 minutes. And then between events as well, if you're then playing again, the amount of times, I think I remember Tommy after Port Rush, just came in and obviously really disappointed after that week in terms of the outcome.
Straight back on the
He was on a plane to somewhere in America. It's like, all right, see ya. And you kind of, how do you recover from that?
Yeah.
And I think he's someone who's very good at doing that, because he does get into that process. But you've then got to almost, how do I kind of recharge between events? Sometimes don't do that extra practice day, maybe, depending on what event's coming up.
It's hard though, isn't it?
It is hard, because then you're going, they've done it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's then you get to a point where you can back your own prep, and you know that you've done it before and those kind of things, and seeing yourself as that individual rather than, I've got to do that because he's doing it or she's doing it. So it is difficult, and you would almost encourage those players, and they'll do this anyway, to have that protocol, to have that kind of an energy playbook. How do I recharge between rounds? How can I then recharge between tournaments as well?
Yeah, it's a lot into it. Like you say, as a professional golfer, you are the CEO, and you've got to think all that. And like you say, sat on a plane for, you've just had disappointment, let's say, at a tournament, you got to sit on a 12-hour plane then, licking your wounds, going, oh God, constantly thinking about what's just happened. Yeah. And then you've got to get the motivation to get up the next day, or you are hyper motivated and you've almost got to bring yourself back down a little bit again.
I've had times in different sports where you've planned to do a session, or you've planned to travel to do some work, and I can think of a couple of examples where you get there and they go, I'm knackered, I'm just going home. Yeah. You go, sorry, what? Like, I've just planned the whole diary around this. But what's the other side is they'll do the right thing to me and do the work, but they're going through the motions. Yeah. So I've literally had to fly home before, but then you go, well, yeah, because you need to recharge. And that's the kind of mindset these people need to have at times. It's not good for you,
it's not good for them if they're not doing it. They have to be really selfish, don't they?
Yeah, and that's my ego then going, well, we should be doing this. And I actually realise, well, no, what's the right thing here for that individual? And if we're working on themselves to kind of be able to know themselves and to back those decisions, then you've got to back it as well.
I'm going to ask you a tough question there.
Okay.
Who do you think is the most mentally in charge of their own game? Who do you think has the best psychological mindset?
That is a tough one, because there's obviously I'm trying to think of one that's not like a like an obvious one.
Well, tell us, in your opinion, who do you think is literally, and you're right, it's not someone that people can copy, because you mentioned before you can't copy those mindsets. But who do you look at and go, wow, they have really got this nailed on?
From the outside, this is probably you can look at Rory at the Ryder Cup and the reactions to the crowd, and being able to turn around. We talk about the emotion and showing that reaction and things like that, to be able to hit those shots under pressure. Yeah, is just mind blowing from a psychologist's point of view. And you could probably say that for a lot of those players, to be honest, to be able to recover reset, and then execute a shot. And there was one from Justin Rose that was kind of miles to the right near an advertising board. You're thinking, how's he going to do this? And he just plays this unbelievable shot. But I quite like like Ludwig Åberg.
Yeah.
You don't really know what's going on because it just seems so kind of like stoic.
Almost robotic.
Yeah. Yeah. And quite quiet, quite kind of consistent.
Doesn't get too up or too down.
So quite contained. So I think that's a mindset that you can you can't force. I think it's often quite natural, that one. So sometimes you almost want him to show a little bit more, but that contained mindset doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. Now that's how it looks from the outside. That doesn't mean they don't care. Like sometimes you see these people and you think, oh, then, they're kind of just going along with it. There'll be real passion and fire behind it, but the ability to kind of stay in the moment. So that would be one that's maybe a little bit different.
Who do you think's the best that's ever done it?
Well, you'd probably have to say Tiger Woods, wouldn't you? Really?
I mean, that's the obvious answer, but I just want to kind of hear it from you as well. But what was
under
it?
pressure, like the kind of, well, you talk about clutch mindset, like, obviously brilliant sportsman, talent and everything like that. But in terms of the real kind of competitor and that kind of, I'll take it to you, I'll go head to head and I'm just going to back myself to win in those moments. You can't really go beyond that.
How much of this is built from reps? As in, like, how much is the mindset as well built on, I have done the work. Like, I've left no stone unturned. I am so unbelievably prepared that it gives you that kind of inbuilt superpower. I always feel like Tiger had that in him. It was like, I've done the work. Yeah. I've left nothing. No one has worked harder than me. So I deserve this.
Yeah. You've got to pair that mindset and with the work, so you can look across loads of different sports, can't you? So you can. I was watching something, Steph Curry. I think he made 105 shots in a row from the side, and I was watching him talk about it and saying, like, when did you feel nervous? He said, well, I felt nervous at 42 because I was aiming for 50, but just the reps, like that confidence on, I've done the work.
It's like I've done it.
Yeah. So 100%. Like we talk about that, like. That almost like a perverse enjoyment of practice.
That's the one thing, honestly, the more time I've spent with the guys on Live, it's unbelievable how much they love practicing. Yeah.
You've got to really dial into it, haven't you?
It's crazy, honestly. They're there for hours, regardless of the weather, whether it's boiling hot, like we're in there in Singapore, and it's like they've jumped in a swimming pool, but they're on there hitting balls, and I'm like, it's mental. Yeah, sure. I find it unbelievable.
Surely you don't need to do that anymore, guys. You're already pretty good at it. Like that's from the outside. That's often what you think about it, but it's falling in love with that process, I guess. Or even when you're not in love, love's maybe it is love-hate, isn't it? Because you're not doing it well enough, so you do it more. But I also really enjoy it. So sometimes one of the things you're trying to do is tell, that maybe that is enough if we're thinking about energy and things like that.
But it's a bit like the gym at the moment. I've been dead into the gym for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Did I love it at first? No. Didn't love it. Yeah. It was like going through the motions. And now I genuinely I kind of love it. I feel bad if I've not done it. Yeah. I actually get so much, and even those little things, if I feel stronger now because I'm like, well, I've kind of done the work. Yeah. I've lifted the weights. I've done what I've needed to do for the last 6 months. I feel prepared. You know what I mean? And I probably need to do that with my golf practice as well, to be fair. But I do love it. And I think that's what the elite athletes can do. They just love that kind of hard work and that graft.
And then even when they're not loving it, they still rock up and do it. So there is a really boring element to this, and it's kind of like, just keep rocking up, just keep turning up.
And again, going back to that point, there are certain times still now that I
just get it done.
I don't want to work out. Yeah. It doesn't mean I hate it. I don't want to. I'm tired. But I do it and I go, I'm glad I did that. Yeah. That was worthwhile.
It's an interesting one because I was having a chat with a golfer the other day, and they were really like, well, I do this in my practice, and they were mapping it all out. And you're kind of thinking, but then in a clutch situation, he was saying, I'm really good in kind of playoffs and my record in playoffs. And this is kind of a young up and coming professional. And one of the things we looked at his profile, and he was very kind of detailed and perfectionist and structured and stuff. And one of the things we talked about was, but when you were a kid, what did you used to do? Like short game, for instance, what did you used to do? Because obviously that's a little bit more creative, feels a little bit more playful. So we then talked about, well, how can you add a little bit of that into that process? So it's not purely kind of relentless structure and so precise. Like when you just throw some balls down and almost give yourself 15, 20 minutes to play.
Yeah.
Like almost with a deliberate sense of what you're trying to achieve. So you're not just messing about, but there's a freedom to it.
Yeah.
Because if we train like this, but then expect ourselves to be able to be creative or curious when we're playing, but we've not practiced it.
No.
So that would be one element. Sometimes you kind of help someone like tweak their practice a little bit, because it doesn't feel like practice if you're just hitting chip shots, or do you know what I mean? But it is, because you've got to be able to do it in different ways. And then what we were talking about before with obviously the Steph Curry example and the grind and the practice. There's a player who in rugby league who came and spoke to me, and he kind of was talking about his mindset that he wanted to get into. And he was someone who is super professional. They all are, to be fair, but like no stone left unturned. And he said, I think I've got something. And it was like ultimate preparation in the week, ultimate surrender when it comes to match day. And that he was kind of saying, well, there's 50,000 people coming to watch. They don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but I've got more control than them. So I've done all the work, trust that process. And now I just want to play with freedom and kind of trust that instinct. It's quite a good way of putting it across. Obviously that's a team sport, but that was his kind of way of trying to tap into a different mindset.
What about Scottie Scheffler?
Yeah, I mean,
again from the outside.
From the outside, again, it looks like someone who's very kind of consistent, very persistent, very kind of structured. I mean, you can see when he's playing himself in kind of regular events, it doesn't seem like anything can really kind of rattle him. So in terms of those responses,
he shows a bit of anger every now and again.
Yeah, which is nice, isn't it?
Yeah,
you want to see that. It's hard when you look back when you
I've really grown to like him a lot over the last few years.
I think he comes across well.
I thought he was boring at first.
Yeah.
I was like, he's boring. He doesn't show a lot. But actually, the more I'm seeing these little glimpses, I'm like, no, he does show enough.
And he obviously shows emotion when it comes to the team events as well. Like we've seen him at the last few Ryder Cups showing emotions, and that's. I don't mean that's good to see. I just mean in general, like it's nice to see, like you care to see these people as human beings, not just kind of robots that we can sometimes see on TV.
I'm going to ask you a really interesting question here, and I've keep wondering this a lot recently. Yeah. How much do you think Scottie Scheffler's belief, his religion, comes into play when it comes to psychology?
Yeah, because obviously he gave some interesting interviews at different times, didn't he, this year? And I think they got kind of turned on in different ways. I think it'll be a massive part. I think it'll, I think in general, if you think of a human being, how they're conditioned kind of growing up, their early experiences, but also like their values. And that's really closely intertwined with religion. And it probably gives a sense of freedom to a point, almost that kind of the sense of something bigger. Yeah. It kind of makes you feel, it's not all about me. That spotlight's not as big. And I think he's said before about it's probably already a plan for me to kind of let it unfold.
I know.
But then that kind of, I think it sounded like he had a bit of a conflict. There's that, but then like, why do I really want it so much in the moment? But then afterwards, when I can reflect, the kind of, maybe the faith and the values and the beliefs kind of give a little bit of rationality to that. So you've got someone with like almost two contrasting elements. Like I really want it, but actually maybe I don't want it as much because in general this is part of a bigger picture.
Actually mean? Because I've not been a religious person ever. I must admit this year more than ever I've been curious about religion because it makes me think, is it almost this lovely kind of freedom? I know that lots of people listening and watching will be religious and they'll probably that's what we get, but like looking at Scottie, it's like it almost like just floats through life, letting what's going to happen. Yeah. Obviously works hard, of course he does, and he's got unbelievable skill, of course he does, and he wants it, of course he does, but like it must be quite nice just to be like, if I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. And
it also happens when it's quite nice when you're the best player in the world as well, doesn't it?
You've got a few quid in your back pocket.
So that kind of balances that out as well. So it'd be interesting if you kind of went back, but I think definitely it gives someone a sense of kind of like grounding. It gives someone a sense of like authenticity, that's part of who they are. And then there will be an element of kind of, there's a bigger plan in place. So that element of ultimate surrender, Like if I do everything I can do and I control the controllables, then we'll kind of see what happens.
With your profiling, when you're starting to work with players, athletes, is religion almost a chapter within the profiling that you've got to explore?
So it would come. So when you start working with an individual, you have that initial conversation, and once you've decided to start working together, there's two elements that I would look at. So one would be like a psychometric profile. So that is, okay, what's our preferences? You know, what are our performance kind of preferences under pressure? What might stress us out? How do you manage this person? When those strengths get overplayed, what does that look like? Where do they get confidence from? And that's kind of an automated profile. And they'll
end up in that process telling you about religion.
Yeah, so you have that, which is that's like an online thing that they would complete. And then, but that's got to sit alongside a conversation, ideally. So you can't just, like human beings, we've talked about this kind of stuff even this morning. You can't put them in a box, right? And say, oh, well, we're both extroverts, so we're the same. And then we're both, you know, aggressive, so we're the same or whatever. We don't fit neatly in a box. There'll be times where you might dial something up or dial something back, or when you're with the family versus golf and work and everything. So we've got to try and understand that this human being's in front of you is quite a complex combination of like beliefs, emotions, experiences, values. So we do a profile, which is kind of neat and tidy, and we're trying to just understand where someone starts from. What's their mindset like? Is it activated by rewards? So if you're playing golf, you'll have someone who just goes, oh, how good would this be? Like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a birdie. Or I'm going to shoot 5 under today. And then you'll have someone who's really kind of level, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. You'll have someone who's really threat activated. So I'm quite like that. I'm kind of like, oh, what might go wrong here? What do I need to be aware of? But that can be quite an effective mindset as well. And then you can have another mindset which like really wants the reward, but is also really kind of conscious of the threats. So they're often like being pulled in 2 different directions, so quite alert, ready to respond quite easily. So you're looking at where that individual's mindset might be and when they might need to flex, but then you pair that with a conversation of like, who are you? What's your story? What hardships have you gone through? Who's shaped you? Who've been the biggest influences? Like, what do you want to be known for? What kind of human being do you want to be? How do you want that to feel? You know,
it's a lot, isn't it?
All those kind of questions. Well, it is a lot, but typically people are quite kind of open with those kind of things because you're just trying to understand what makes them tick and almost what's got them to this point as well. So really pairing a neat and tidy profile with the ability to have just a conversation with a human being, and that gives you that input. So you would then know, okay, if religion's a big part of that person's upbringing and their faith and their beliefs, then you know that's going to be part of the work going forward.
What we're going to talk about Ryder Cup. Now, I know you're slightly hands tied because we don't want to be giving any secrets away to our US audiences. No. I'm sure Keegan Bradley's listening. But you explain to the viewers and listeners your role for the last 3 Ryder Cups?
Last 4.
Last 4 Ryder Cups.
Is that right? Paris was the first one I was involved in.
Whistling Straits, Rome, Bethpage.
Yeah.
You've been there. Mm-hmm. You've been part of the team. You've had your team Ryder Cup Europe tracksuit on.
Yeah.
Explain to the listeners and viewers what your role's been and how did that come about?
So going back to probably 2017. So I met Thomas Bjorn ahead of Paris. I'm working in different sports like we've talked about, so team sports predominantly, and having a bit of a knowledge on things like leadership, team dynamics, how kind of teams knit together. We started working essentially on, like we just talked about there, understanding the personalities in that team, and working with the captain to go, right, how do you get the most out of these guys? If you pair them together, what are you going to get from a combination? Because you've got to remember that the captains, they're given this role as an honour because they've been a great player and they're getting to a point now where they can kind of put some of that kind of wisdom onto this team and they start to build this team. But it's a challenge because you're putting together guys who are used to playing against each other.
Yeah, mini businesses
together, all playing for money, and suddenly you're going to play and it's not for money, and we're just going to all get together and play. And obviously there's a huge history behind the Ryder Cup and the stories and the narrative and everything that goes kind of beyond that. So my role then is very much kind of sitting alongside like the data points that we use. We all like to analyse everything in golf, in every sport, in life. So I'm sitting alongside that stuff going, okay, let's understand the people from like a personality point of view, a character point of view. What are you going to get under pressure? And just try to understand that. So it's an extra piece of information that the captains and the vice captains can then kind of tap into.
An extra tool.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think what's really important with this, so you hear like psychologist and Ryder Cup, and people might think, oh, the guy's sitting on like couches, or am I kind of giving motivational speeches and all those kind of things? It's not. It's very much in the background, trying to work with the leadership from a point of view of just understanding the people that make up this team. And that stuff sits alongside, like I said, the data that Eduardo provides. It sits alongside the instincts of a captain and kind of builds into that. And yeah, so it's been a pretty cool journey to this point, and a real privilege to be part of it.
And you've got a 75% win rate.
Yeah. Yes.
We don't
I have it,
we don't talk about Whistling Straits.
COVID, on it. No, but what's interesting with, I think, looking back on those, working with those captains, obviously Podry, the captain at Whistling Straits, I really bought into it. You know, from a leadership point of view, you've got to start to understand, like, yourself as well. Like, okay, what's going to be my leadership style, and how do I kind of adapt to these guys without losing that authenticity? And I think even through those 4 Ryder Cups, the players would be pretty positive on the captaincies going through it. And also, you do try and reflect on those kind of journeys as well. And I would say that I wouldn't class it as a negative experience at all. Like, it's still a great group of people. It's fascinating to watch people try and perform under that pressure. And they always have a good party at the end.
They're great parties.
Yeah.
What these guys feel tremendous pressure, don't they? Like I think some people forget that, like, when they are teeing it up on that first tee,
yeah,
their hands are literally shaking.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the most nerve-wracking experiences ever. How the hell do they deal with it?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? What are they doing to help them with the huge? I mean, I was in Paris, I was in Rome. I've certainly one in Paris. That grandstand around the first tee was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you stood there and you're watching these guys and you're thinking, I don't know how they do it. What is it? How is it baked into? Obviously, this is the professional golfers, but like, how is that all baked into your process and your involvement with the team as well?
I think I've always got to remember that these guys are like individual athletes, so they'll be working with a psychologist individually if they want to. They'll have their own teams, but I think one of the things that they've done really well in the last kind of couple of years is be really clear with the players that we expect you to have a kind of response or a kind of framework or skill set to be able to kind of perform under pressure. That doesn't guarantee you're going to be able to, right? But being able to kind of practice those moments, having something to fall back on. So what kind of has helped me in the past with these kind of things? What are my kind of I don't know, frameworks or key things that I can tap into that work for me? And it's having that presence of mind to manage that. So I think what they've done really well is being able to go, we expect you to have a response to this kind of stuff.
Wow.
We expect you to have a little routine. It might be something quite simple to be able to kind of do this under pressure. Now, that doesn't mean your hands aren't going to shake.
No, but still.
Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit going to that point of how do we respond rather than react. So if it was us, or I'm talking about myself really, I'm going to get off this first tee, right?
Because we've not got a framework.
No.
I don't have a framework.
No.
When I'm nervous, I don't have a framework.
So what do you do? Just kind of
wing it and often not do very well. But like, it's almost, there isn't, maybe that's something I need to work on with you, Tom. Like, I feel like when I'm the most nervous, it feels like it affects me. It affects me a lot. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
And I do weirdly enjoy it. It's a weird enjoyment nerves, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it means something. And I've seen a lot of people say that this year, like, nerves is a privilege.
Yeah.
Like, it is, because you're in that position. Yeah. And it's pretty cool.
Well, what's interesting, I can think of people that I've played golf with who are athletes, but other athletes. So you might have batted in front of 20, 30,000 people, and you're at a golf course in the northwest of England, and there's 6 blokes behind you watching you tee off who probably don't know who you are, and you're shaking. Oh, okay, this is interesting. But there's an element there of like expectation, And it might be with you as well, in terms of what you do for a job. These people are if someone's watching you, that might be the one shot they see you hit. You're like, shit, these guys probably think I need to be like really good here. So there's an element of expectation. And if you go like if you play another sport, oh, well, he's good at rugby, so we should be able to hit the ball further. Yeah. There's this expectation. So there is an element of that sometimes. So it's a very human thing because it is just you and you're putting the ball and your hands are shaking a little bit. I think we do have to respect that these guys are obviously the best in the world at doing it. So there is an element of they have that skill to fall back on.
But a framework, they all have a framework. That's really interesting.
I would expect them to have some kind of framework or some kind of routine, right, okay, what do I need to do here? And there'll be some that are really regimented, in terms of number of practice swings, things like that.
Like Matt Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, quite possibly. And then there'll be some that are a little bit more kind of they walk out and they see it a little bit more like a challenge and a little bit of a confrontation probably. So you've got to understand and appreciate that each one will be subtly different as well. But I think it sounds quite simple when we talk about it now. But you can't just expect to do it on the first tee of a Ryder Cup. So I would expect they're doing it in practice at the Ryder Cup. I expect they're doing it on the practice trip before the Ryder Cup. I expect they're doing it when they're playing with a playing partner that's going to be at the Ryder Cup with them in these other events and building in that kind of the reps that we're talking about.
Do you think this is why Ryder Cup players go on to do better things as well? Like since the Ryder Cup players have done fantastic. And is it those tools that they learn? Is it the sharing ideas? Is it all? I'm more talking the European team. Is it those? You're being put in a position of high pressure. You're learning so much of yourself. You're learning so much from teams, experts around you, which actually you then take away as your own little mini business. We talked about before as a CEO, going, wow, my toolkit is so much more fuller now. Yeah. I can use that to my own my own personal advantage.
And it kind of works. And you kind of. If I can do it with this lot shouting at me, then I can do it at a regular tour event, and there's an element of proof, so the brain finds it harder to kind of consider new things. So when you've got kind of evidence, well, I've done this, I've done it here, I've done it there, I've played that shot, I've played this shot, you're kind of going, I know I can do it. It's not like I believe I can do it. I actually already have done it. I've proved it to myself. So, and there's probably an element of momentum and energy as well for these guys coming off that, just kind of feel good factor, I guess.
How wild was Bethpage? Because a lot was talked into the atmosphere, the crowd. Yeah. And that really falls back into the psychology of players, doesn't it? Yeah. Like you mentioned already before, the Rory shot when he had a bit of a chirp at the crowd and turned around and hit a worldie Justin Rose. Like that away Ryder Cup is the most hostile Ryder Cup ever. Yeah. Yet our guys still managed to perform at that level. Yeah. Like, what the hell?
I think, and it was wild, and it's funny because when you're kind of part of it, and you're kind of with the backroom staff, and you're in kind of the team room. See, I watched quite a lot of it on TV, right? Which sounds like people go, "Oh, well, you just watched it on TV," but then you'd walk out and it would hit you. And I remember walking out and I was kind of walking against the crowd. And I obviously had my Team Europe top on. So you're getting a little bit of stick. And then...
What, they shouted at you? USA.
Probably calling me bald and, whatever. Not a lot, but you get the odd one. And then people looking at me up and down and things like that. Because you think about it, you're one person walking that way. Yeah. And you've got a whole kind of throng of Americans who've had a few beers walking the other way.
Yeah, so you're an easy target.
You're getting a bit, yeah. But I remember walking out and it was baking hot, and because there was loads of dust and sandy kind of on the paths, and I remember it kind of rising, and there was like beer bottles kind of discarded everywhere, and I just thought, oh, this is kind of getting it. It was at that time when Shane and Rory's match they were bringing out the state troopers and all that. And you could smell weed. Weed was like in the air. I didn't kind of realise till I got there that was kind of legal in that state as well. So it kind of all I don't know, all the senses were kind of activated. I kind of thought, oh, okay. And I'm doing like what felt like a 1 hour walk to try and catch up with a certain match because you want to see what everything's going on. You do. So that's kind of what comes to mind when you say like, how wild was it? And obviously some of the abuse and things like that you hear.
How was that abuse being brought back in the team room? So obviously out in the public they were kind of like biting the tongue a lot of the time, I guess. There's a few little snaps. When they were back in the team room and you were kind of around, what was that feedback from players, caddies, etc. about the abuse? Were they letting it fuel them, or was it affecting them?
I think there was an element of fueling, and I think there's probably a little bit of kind of gallows humour with it as well. You know, there will be some things that will have said that will have been quite amusing, I imagine, behind closed doors, and then obviously certain stuff which will make them just want to go out and go again, that kind of confrontational nature. But I think that was where Luke and the vice captains would have been really good at kind of just calming it down, you know, and using it as fuel, using it as part of our narrative. But yeah, I didn't sense anything kind of, obviously there were the certain matches that were pretty full
Spicy.
on. Yeah. But it's funny because once those days finish, it's kind of like back in, they do a bit of recovery and then they're off. Do you know what I mean? So then they'll have their debrief, players and caddies only. Do you know, like, so you're not in there for all that.
What makes Luke such a great captain?
I knew you'd ask this, and it's quite interesting, kind of reflecting on it, because having worked with different leaders in different sports, and I think like the assumption that maybe we've had in the past that leaders need to be kind of really kind of assertive, dominant, like extroverts as well, would be something that we'd have tapped into in like business and sport kind of in the past. And I think that's changed over the last decade. And he would certainly fit into that category, as in he's not like that. So I would say with Luke, there's a quiet confidence to him. Everything he does is done kind of to such high standards. It's thoroughly professionally, thoroughly planned. I think he has an empathy with people. So a real team first mentality. So we'll do what is right, not what is easy. So has an ability to connect with different personalities. So there's a kind of warmth to him in that sense. So we talk about building trust, building connection. You don't do that.
He's super well respected, isn't he?
Yeah, you don't build trust in a sports team by like heroics or doing big things. You do it by little conversations that you almost couldn't see. So I think he'd be really effective at doing that. And also the respect from the fact that what he's done in the world of golf. So world number one, he's obviously been super successful as a player in Ryder Cups, so that automatically gives you that credibility. But really switched on with his kind of, and you could see this in his speech, I thought, with the narratives, with the messaging, everything he does has been thought through. And then the other side of it, I would say, is I've seen him make decisions really quickly, like on the ground. You know, if something's not quite right, he'll get something sorted quite quickly. So there's a lot of warmth there.
Trust that he's going to do.
Trust and things, but then there's also an element of...
But that's trust as well. Like, if you know something's going to get done, that's great.
100%.
Trust.
So yeah, it's been quite... There's a book on Carlo Ancelotti. It's called Quiet Leadership. And I think it's quite an interesting one because, you know, it goes against that kind of assumption of extroversion
of course.
And, you know, this aggressive style. And probably fits into that, and probably
the difference between Jose Mourinho and Carlo Ancelotti.
Yeah, exactly. Or even Jurgen Klopp or someone like that, right? Who's obviously is a little bit more kind of extrovert, or so you can see there are different ways of doing it. And I think the best leaders, they have an element of authenticity, but not to a point where you just go, well, that's who I am, so I'm just going to I'll treat everyone the same. They have an element that they can flex, so they might treat you differently to they treat me, but they're still being authentic to themselves.
It's clever. Really, really clever skill, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's not like a superficial, like, oh, I know how to get the best out of you. There's a real genuine, like, how do I get the most out of this guy? If I put him together with him, what's that going to play out like under pressure? And what struck me with him was that he was just someone who, you know, he would take things away and reflect on them and think about them. So I learned quite quickly not to expect an answer super quick. He would go away and decide if he found this useful and if he could use it within his captaincy. So yeah.
Okay, more hard hitting question. Is he going to go again?
I don't know. I mean, it would be one of those, wouldn't it? Like, I imagine the three-peat can be quite attractive as a narrative.
Nobody's ever done it, have they?
No. So I imagine there's a bit of a kind of decision to be made for him there if he wants to do it again. I can't give you any inside information because I don't have any.
Do you think they would like a dare manner?
I know, yeah.
Like it's not good. It's not as if he's going to an away Ryder Cup. It's a home Ryder Cup, which is obviously massively normally stacked in your advantage.
Yeah.
think the Irish crowd are going to be unbelievable. I can't wait to go to the Adair Manor.
I know.
I think, obviously...
Do you think he's going to go again?
I think the players want him to.
Yeah.
Yes, I think he will. It would surprise me if he didn't.
Yeah.
But I also totally get if he didn't.
Yeah. It's a tough one, isn't it?
Because
you can
if he said,
yeah.
you know what, as for me, I'd go... Yeah.
Your legacy's intact. You've done something unbelievable.
I'm a bit gutted.
Yeah.
I'm a bit like, I'd be gutted if he didn't go again.
Yeah.
But I also, and you'll probably know this better than me, how much is what has been built now in those Ryder Cups will continue anyway. I feel like there's quite a lot of good processes that have been built in.
Yeah.
That regardless of who's the actual captain, the back room that, you know, is kind of pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine someone's going to come in after the success. Let's say I don't want to use an example, but whoever might come in as the next captain go, you know what? Yeah, me. Let's wipe the slate clean. Yeah. That was great, but I'm going to do it my way now.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that's going to happen. The USA team will keep doing that because they're trying to find the answer at the moment. So whoever the next Ryder Cup captain will be, will go again, wipe the slate clean. It didn't obviously work. Let's try again.
Yeah.
But we've built on 3 in the last 4 Ryder Cups now. They've been pretty successful by Western Straits. So it's like we built on that. You know, let's keep building on that. And regardless of who the front man is, we've still got this really nice process.
Yeah, there's definitely, if you look at that spell from Paris, even after Whistling Straits, do you know what I mean? Like there was a lot of consistencies that they carried on with, and I think the team that runs it, like even when you look at all the stuff they put out, like social media point of view, like the content, I just think it's just so well thought through, but also that balance between that kind of family feel, but also like super professional. They obviously had the New York, the photographer David Yarrow photo that they did this year. Like all these little touches are so good, and I think it's getting that balancing point between, okay, what's worked before, so what are we going to keep going? How do we bottle that? So with successful teams, they're able to kind of bottle that culture, like define it. What does that actually mean? And then have some things that are kind of like your set plays. Like what can we fall back on? Like what's really worked for us, while still allowing someone to come in and almost put some of that individuality on it. So to keep that consistency with a little bit of kind of different, like he did this time, you know, obviously the stuff that they've talked about in the build up, I think the VR stuff that they talked about, I think that's a really fascinating example of, you know, like sometimes something like that, people might be worried about how the player's going to react to this. Or are they going to think it's a bit naff or a bit kind of quirky or whatever? And you've got to understand that out of those players, maybe some of them might really tap into it, really buy into it, really love it and use them quite a lot. And some people might go, yeah, it was a bit of fun. Like, I quite enjoyed it. But that's it. So, but being willing to do that would be an example of, we can't just go, well, let's do exactly the same again. So Luke said to me, we can't just do the same thing for Bethpage as we did for Rome. It's a different challenge. It's an away match. It's under pressure. So we need to know more about that kind of stuff. And the VR would be another example of that. Let's try things. Let's do it like as a team would. Whereas I think maybe in the past that's been harder to do because of the fact that it's a team that's together for a relatively short period. This team feels like it's been together longer because of the consistency amongst it, because of like the stuff they do in the build up to it. So I think it's just getting that balance right. What's worked, and then what might we want to just tweak a little bit.
Let's practice with the stench of Guinness everywhere. for Adair Manor.
There'll probably be some better banter, I guess, in Adair Manor than there was in Bethpage.
I can't wait for the banter. I think it'll be hilarious. This is a more interesting. What do the USA team need to do right now?
Keep doing what they're doing. Double down.
Keep changing. No consistency. Keep swapping your processes.
It's a really kind of tough question, I guess, without knowing too much about it, because there will be stuff they've done that I think the danger is as well, you know, like I said, you always rip it all up and start again. Well, what if there were a couple of things that worked really well?
You don't know, do you?
Do you know what I mean? So obviously that final day Was there anything that kind of drove that? Was it just kind of momentum and kind of freedom like we talked about before? But what would they like to keep? You know, because it might be that you don't need to rip the whole thing up, but there might just be some other things you want to add in, or you want to change, or
that last day was wild.
Yeah.
You lost a bit more hair that day.
If I had any, I'd have lost it. Yeah.
I mean, how that was, honestly, I remember watching it and going, yeah, but we're not going to lose it. And I go, we're not going to lose it. And then it was like, it was like, it got really, really nerve wracking.
Yeah. And I got asked, like, how did you feel at that point? I was like, I just felt like everyone at home, I expect. And I remember we were watching it. So it was the physios, some coaches, like some of the recovery guys. We were watching it in like the team room, because there's obviously all these matches going on. People think you're watching, like, you're on the course all the time. You can't
watch on the course. It's not a great...
It's not.
You can't follow anything.
No, because then you feel like, well, why am I picking this guy? What about this guy? He's on his own now, and he's not. But that's how you feel, and you want to see what's going on. So it's funny, because at that point, you are just a fan. Well, that's how I felt. And people were pacing up and down around the gym. We had Julian, who's like the king caddy, who looks after all the guys. Like, he was kind of pacing up and down, kind of trying to keep everyone calm. Don't worry, it's going to get done. It's going to get done. So yeah, I mean, I was getting messages in the morning. Enjoy the champagne.
I know.
I
bet you're ready to pop the cork.
Well, as I've said before, though, what I say about my brain is like scanning for threats. So I'm always like, what could go wrong here? Which can sometimes be helpful and can sometimes be unhelpful, right? But I was getting all these messages thinking, oh God, like, they're still really good at golf, these Americans. Do you know what I mean? And it's not done. And Luke said something similar to me. He said it won't be as easy as everyone thinks. But you are just watching that, and you're watching those first matches, and obviously the first two go to the last, and you're kind of thinking, well, if they'd got half a point, you kind of go, no, we're okay here. And obviously, yeah. So, but I remember when obviously Shane played that shot and then hold that putt. We were watching it on TV. And
you're going mental.
It was brilliant, because it's almost like, I think it's part of the privilege of being in those environments. People think it's like, I don't know, being near the players or whatever, which is obviously cool. But that is my core memory from that. With these random guys, some you know well, some that you've only met that week, and you're jumping around like kids, watching it on a screen like that in a gym, and there's like 8 of you or something, and then rushing out to the 18th and kind of seeing it all kind of play out from there, and obviously going from the retaining it to winning it. But just on Shane, on that, he gave an interview a few weeks after, didn't he? You'll remember this. I can't remember what event it was, but he talked about, he'd played the approach shot to, what was it, 8 foot or whatever it was. And he talks about going into that threat state, like, shit, I've got to actually convert this now. But then reframing it with his caddy. So going, I've got the opportunity to do something that is the coolest thing I'll ever do. How good is that? And to do that between putting your club away, walking up, and then executing.
It's really important.
So it's great for us to talk about it now, because we know it goes in and we know everything that comes off it. But to me, that was when you asked before about mental toughness, I did think about that one just as a great example of like reframing it. So your brain's gone into threat state and he's gone into opportunity. Like, I've dreamt of this since I was a kid. How cool could this be? And suddenly you're like, right, okay. And obviously when it plays out like that, it's nice, isn't it?
Amazing. It's so good. How much, on that note, I hear this a lot, and I'm sometimes guilty of this, and sometimes I'm guilty of this in a YouTube video because I'm trying to set the scene a little bit, but how much does it actually play into golf psychology when you go, don't go in the water, don't go out of bounds, don't leave it short?
Yeah, I think it probably does, because you're painting a picture for your brain to kind of, that whole thing about the brain doesn't hear don't.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Is the truth in that?
Yeah, so your brain's picturing that water or whatever, and especially if you're saying, sometimes my mates will say it to me, what's that, bunker? Or because you're just having a laugh, aren't you? And then the amount of time it happens, so there's something to it. But it's then being able to go. It's not just going, oh right, okay, well that's just it then. It's then going, right, what's my intention here? What's important now? What am I actually seeing this shot? What am I trying to do here? Those little conversations you have with yourself, rather than don't think about thinking in the water. If you do think about the water, just try and kind of slow it down. What's important now? What's my intention? And then try and give yourself that discussion as well.
So if I start saying, don't find the fairway, don't find the green.
You'll be able to.
But you're right. It's putting that mindset.
Yeah.
Let's hit a good shot down the fairway.
Yeah.
What does a good shot look like?
Yeah.
You know, what's going to be a great angle to hit my second shot from? Not the don'ts and don'ts.
It is classic, like, what do I want to do versus what do I don't want to do?
Let's give this ball a chance of rolling past the hole.
Yeah.
You know, it's all those more. And I think I do deep down think of that. I think in YouTube videos, because I'm kind of setting a scene, I end up dramatizing the negatives because it's like, it's a bit of a story.
Yeah.
I'll stand on a hole sometimes and go, right, guys, par 4. Now, if I was playing in a tournament, I'd go, okay, par 4, there's the fairway. Let's go left side of the fairway. Nice approach into the green. Where on a video, I'm like, there's water on the right. There's out of bounds on the left. Is that a fire pit in the middle of the fairway? Because it is creating a bit of that drama. We've got some questions from the fans, Tom. Quick fire questions. Paul, and this is a very popular one. Paul Sparacello. Why doesn't my range session carry over to the course?
Probably depends what you're doing on your range session, but I do think how you structure those are quite important. So I remember going to one of the first tournaments I went to, and guys are just shelling balls and asking the question, why are we doing this? Like, how are you practicing? How does that kind of tap into? Because I think you can sometimes, coming from other sports, you can ask the stupid questions. Like, I'm not a golf expert in that sense. So I think it's how you structure those. If you are just hitting balls or hitting your 7-iron until you're happy with it, and then hitting your 8-iron until you're happy with it, how many times are you actually just hitting one 7-iron with intention? Golf, so can you add an element of like mentality, like structure to it? So you can still do that, warm up, etc. But can I have 10 minutes where I'm going, right, what's my intention? What's my little routine I'm going to do before this shot? And then if it's not perfect, leave it. Because our natural thing is, I need to do another one. I need to finish on a good one. But right now, I'm going to be somewhere else. I might hit a wedge from here and almost try and play a few holes within it.
I suppose technology like Top Tracer and things like that now have helped as well, because you can play games within a driving range.
Yeah.
Do you know how many times when I used to be at Trafford Golf Centre, there was a guy that used to go down there, got daily, called David, and he'd get 25 balls, but he'd be there for like 2 hours or an hour and a half. You're thinking, how's he done that? And when you're actually watching practice, he'll really go through his routine. He'll hit a drive, kind of work out where that's gone. And I asked him one day, what are you doing? And he said, I'm playing my golf course. Just through his imagination. We didn't have technology at the time, just through imagination. I'm now, I probably pushed that a little bit right, so I'm kind of in the right rough and the pin's on the left, so I've now got to hit this shot. And I'm going to, really think, and then we had a little putting green at the back. And he'd go to the putting green at the back.
Oh, wow, right, so he's took it to the extreme,
and kind of, right, I would probably have hit that to about 24. Okay, this is that putt from 20 feet. So
there's no right or wrong in terms of practice, I would say, but you might sometimes just want to go to the range and hit balls, and that's fine. But then if you want to take something onto the course, are you practicing with intent, or are you just getting reps in? So there's a subtle difference in terms of your intention when you're driving there. Do I have a little plan that what I'm trying to do? Because it's so tempting. If you don't, it's like that, don't finish on a bad one, isn't it? Right. But if you you're not getting something, can I leave that and go on to what I've planned? So having an element of even just a little bit of prep before it.
And a bit of consequence, a bit of pressure, because it puts you under pressure. Like hitting driving range, I think that's my big feedback there, Paul, is like, when you've got a bucket balls, there's no pressure. Can hit balls all day. Doesn't matter. And even if I do finish on a bad one, I can pinch one from the stones at the front.
Exactly. I do that all the time.
You need that bit of pressure. You need that, right, I'm going to hit a drive here, and if I pull this, it's out of bounds. Okay. Well, how does this feel? How does that make my heart rate increase? And what's my processes? What's my framework to get over that pressure?
So even your practice swings and stuff like that, like how many do you still do your practice swings when you're just hitting balls? Like,
not many.
No,
not many do.
Which is, again, if it's just reps and you're working on something technical, that's fine. So split it up between your reps versus your actual play.
Well, I always think of it, if you had an hour practice time, you split it up into 3 sections. You do your kind of, what I used to call them now, like your technique section. So 20 minutes just on technique, and you really block practice. 20 minutes on more kind of shot shaping and being creative, and then 20 minutes more of that consequence, like it's got to feel something, it's got to be more of a result driven exercise. We've got more questions, loads of more questions. Jacob Holland, how do I help my 12-year-old move on from a bad shot / hole and not allow it to impact the rest of his round? And that would be a really good one for viewers and listeners, because they probably have children who play, and I know when I was a kid, when I first started playing golf, say kid, it still affects me now, but like if I hit a bad shot, a bad hole, it kind of affects the whole round.
Yeah, it's It's a good question because it's something that I struggle with, you know, as a golfer myself, and I've got 2 kids, kind of 7 and 10, and you see those reactions, and it is such a frustrating sport, and you kind of want them to feel that a little bit as well. Like if they get frustrated, they almost need to learn how to manage that.
To deal with it.
Something really. Yeah, that's not my tip, just to deal with it. But
no, I'm saying it's good. It's good for them to
go
experience it.
Yeah,
because I think golf gives us so much in life anyway, and those what's the right word? Humps in the road. Those instances make you stronger, and you learn from it. So when it happens in business or when it happens in life, you go, I've experienced this a little bit before. I
also think kids are wiser than we think sometimes, you know, so we think about like what we said, how you reflect afterwards. Sometimes they're good at forgetting it, but sometimes like, how would you have liked to have, you know, if they look up to a Rory McIlroy or a Tommy Fleetwood, like how do you think Tommy Fleetwood would have reacted there as a 12-year-old or whatever? Like reframing the question in that way. And then on the course, and this, I'm trying to think if this applies to a 12-year-old, I think it probably does, just to have a simple reset kind of thing you go to. So again, that's dead easy to just go, I'll just reset, like breathe or whatever. So if you break it up into 3 things, so release, reset, refocus. So release could be something physical. So it might be literally like kind of shaking it off. It could be taking your glove off.
Snapping your club.
Chucking your club, whatever, yeah. So something physical, I would say, to release the tension, because you might be like angry or you know, so something like kind of releasing like that. Reset could be something physical again. So it could be putting the glove back on. It could be picking your club out again, whatever it might be. And then refocus could just be a little trigger word. And that's something that's really individual. So it could be, for that kid, it could just be fun. It could be next shot. Do you know what I mean? It's something that, it could be something from a film or a TV program that they watch. So release, reset, refocus is a nice way to kind of divide it up.
We filmed with Dean Burmester this year earlier on, and he took a tip from Louis Oosthuizen. When Louis won the Open in 2010, he had a little red dot on his glove. Yeah. But Dean had a little drawing of a fish. Yeah. I said, what have you got a fish? He went, I love fishing. And he said, sometimes when I'm having a bit of a crappy day on the golf course, I just remember, I do like fishing. Yeah. And I'll be fishing tomorrow or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, just get, you know, it's okay. Yeah. Life's all right. Like, you know, I'll be fishing tomorrow. And it's just that little kind of...
It's something that works for you. I think, so Darren Clark, they used to snap the tee, I think.
Oh, really?
You know, like snap out of it.
I like that.
So, yeah. Find something that's individual for you, but have something.
Atkinson.
Yep.
I've butchered that. Where do the yips come from? And how can it be avoided without changing the grip?
That's a good... I think the yips it comes from, we were talking about it before actually, like cognitive overload. So you're like flooded with kind of information and technical things that you want to try and implement, and then an anxiety of that kind of outcome. I mean, how can you deal with it without changing the grip and things like that? You can see guys get to that point, and that's their only.
I think that's such an important way of fixing the hips. If I'm honest with you,
just freeing it up. Some people go left-handed and things like that, don't they?
For me, I had yips on short putts growing up, and kind of that claw grip just almost was so different. It snapped me out of it.
Yep.
A new putter sometimes does it. You know, just something that just snaps you so far out of it.
Freshen it up.
You almost forget about it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that I know he's saying about not changing the grip, but sometimes
I wonder why you don't want to change the grip. Like,
you might not like other styles potentially. Yeah. Sometimes, you know what's also actually changing the physical grip, the actual grip on the club.
Yeah,
go
the feel
thicker,
of
go
it.
Fatter, go whatever. Yeah. Just something that's totally different, or put some more lead weight in the bottom of your putter so that it feels like a different weight. Yeah. There are different ways around it, but you've got to find something that really snaps you out of it as much as possible. An interesting question. Andy Scott, is a hot dog a sandwich?
No. Not for me, no.
Why has he asked that question? I don't know. But
is there some deep and meaningful thing behind that? I would say no.
We're going to get memed for that somehow. But I like the fact he's asked the question.
Fair play, yeah.
Okay, last question. I think this is probably the one that most people would want. We've covered it in bits throughout this episode, but Yannick Von R, would it be cool if you could ask for different techniques to defeat or manage nerves? Motivational tricks could be cool too. And I think nerves is probably the most, even like when I think of golf psychologists, sports psychologists, it is nerves. I think of like managing nerves. And so I know we've covered it a lot, but is there kind of a top overriding factor in it?
I think if you almost think about it pre-round or pre-shot and then kind of during the round. So pre-round, sometimes, I think we've heard players talk about this, is rather than kind of have that overload of like technical information, almost think about how you want it to feel when you're swinging it. You know, when you're on that first tee, how do you want it to feel? So almost have a bit of prep rather than avoid it and just get on there and rush it. Okay, how do I want this to feel? And then during the round, from a nerves point of view, I would say if you're nervous and you're anxious, you often get, like we talked about before, you get fixed in your lead mentality. So if you are an aggressive golfer, you get more aggressive. If you are a cautious golfer, you get even more cautious. So I would say, right, okay, at that point, is it helpful to ask ourselves a question from a different mindset? So if you're the aggressive golfer, like we said before, okay, how can I just play this safely?
Yeah.
Sounds like a negative question, but if you're fixed in a really aggressive approach, it can be really useful. And then the same, if we're being really cautious, almost go, how good could this be? You know, what would a great shot look like here?
Yeah.
And kind of tap into that. And then the ability to reset from mistakes, like we talked about with the 12-year-old question. I think having something that you can fall back on that you actually practice is really important, because the amount of times people go, oh, you can't reset. You don't practice it. You know, practice it on the range, practice it in your kind of rounds that you're just playing with your mates, and get it to a point where it's just something you can fall back on.
I think that's so, you know, I was thinking about this driving home the other day, like when we all first started driving, how nervous were we?
Yeah.
Like when you first step into a car, you're so nervous and oh my God, like this is really scary. How many of us now jump in a car after, no one's nervous driving. Like, after you've driven it for a few years, because you've done the reps and you've kind of given yourself that bit of like reassurance. Yeah, I've kind of done this enough times. And we can say that for loads of things in our life. Like how many times we're all nervous for our first day of a job or our first date or whatever it may be. But over time, when you've a bit more reps, you kind of, those nerves disappear. And I think with golf, I think we're all guilty of not putting the hard work in and expecting not to be nervous. Like, I think we come into it. I'm so guilty of this, thinking I've kind of played since I was however old I was. I've been playing 28 years. Yeah. But I don't really practice in a way that helps me get over nerves.
Yeah. But also, if you were suddenly not nervous, would you be a bit like...
Be a bit weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Because you
like
obviously
nervous is good. Nerves is a privilege.
It, don't we?
Of course we do. Nerves is a privilege.
We keep going back and playing it. And you keep putting yourself through those moments of nervousness, anxiety, like people playing in club comps. Like at our course, the first tee, when it's right back and everything out of bounds left, like, and you've got people on the balcony having a few beers that have gone out early. It's horrible, right? But then you want to be in those groups.
What should you do?
You just bail out, right? Yeah. But if you think about it, nerves is your body's way of saying you're getting ready to do something that is important to you, that you're passionate about, that you're excited about. So nerves and excitement are kind of from the same place.
They are, aren't they?
So like that's why you get, so you don't want to wish them away, but I think it's about how can you work with them? So how can you own that moment rather than the moment kind of taking control of you?
Tom, you've been amazing with your time. So good. How can people learn more about you and get in contact and potentially use some of your services?
So on Instagram, so my business is called Cognite as well. So I work with individual sports teams and businesses as well, just to kind of help you understand thinking better. So yeah, you can use Instagram, you can use the website.
We'll put a link in the description below. Tom, you've been amazing with your time. Obviously, we've worked together for a number of years, but I feel like I need to tap into that a little bit again and try and get over the nerves. But it's been amazing, so good, and I look forward to seeing you in a Dare Manor with your European tracksuit on, with Luke Donald at the Realm, and taking another victory for Team Europe at the Ryder Cup. Right, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like and subscribe, and always say we'll see you all soon. Bye.